I'm fortunate that I played a lot of great games this year. I'm doubly fortunate that I had the time and privilege to do so. Growing older, I find myself being far pickier in deciding to what or whom I give my time. Not in a parsimonious or judgmental way, so much as a time is a finite resource kind of way. I don't want to play uninteresting or derivative or pandering games. I want something to chew on. Film, music, literature, games, these mediums are uniquely positioned to communicate with you, to hit your synapses in a way that inspires myriad emotions, all told to you by a fellow human being, as if to say, I've felt this, and I know you felt this, and I want you to know that we have felt this together. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they're even fun to play, believe it or not. It becomes increasingly important year after year in our culture, rife with commodified, short-form, attention-stealing content, to spend more focused time with fiction, and video games are a befitting vehicle if there ever was one. And today, I would like to share 10 games that made an impact on me, 10 video games I played in this calendar year, 2025, that really stuck with me. Some challenged me to think, some let me appreciate the senses of sight and sound, and some were just good old-fashioned, corn-fed fun. I've tried my best to write this in a way that balances my writing voice and my speaking voice, and in such a way that doesn't veer into a full-on analysis. This episode isn't the place for that. Think of each of these entries as an elevator pitch, me telling you why the game moved me and why you should give each game a go. An elevator pitch during which the elevator ride is just a skosh too long, but I'm making just the right amount of eye contact. Hopefully these entries will give you an idea of why I think these games are worth your time. Also, returning listeners will be aware, but the following games were not necessarily released in 2025, but ones that I played for the first time in 2025. In this way, you as a listener might find something more obscure or forgotten to time, rather than hearing about how great Claire Obscure is for the 1000th list. And that might be a poor example actually. Anyway, let's get on with it. Here are 10 games I think you should play. I debated on whether or not Hollow Knight should be on this list, partly because I started it so late into 2025 and I figured I wouldn't finish it, and partly because there will be an upcoming episode in January at the time of recording. But after having not so much drank in as guzzled a full 30 plus hours in a very short time getting to my first ending, it absolutely warrants a place here. Although this entry will certainly be shorter, tune into the January episode to hear more of my thoughts. Metroidvanias and I have never gotten along all that well. I have no nostalgia for the genre for one, and the idea of frequent backtracking isn't exactly my idea of a great time. Pair this with feeling lost being maybe my least favorite feeling in a video game, and it has always seemed that this genre is maybe just not for me. I'm not sure if Hollow Knight is an exception to this feeling or will be the invitation into the genre, but it's coaxed me out just a little and, frankly, has had me totally wrapped. Folks who have known me or have listened for a while will know that it's no secret that I have very little respect for the get good crowd. A vocal stain on any given player base that doesn't seek to encourage and welcome so much as it does shame and push away, to, quote, maintain the game's respect and the skills they've earned, unquote, I've heard it said. They're a minority, thankfully, and not one that I've seen much of in Hollow Knight's fandom. Indeed, the community is quite welcoming, eager to offer tips and tricks at varying levels of detail so as to not spoil the experience. I found myself perusing the subreddit, cautiously of course, for ideas of charm combinations in particularly difficult areas, the third Colosseum round comes to mind, and whether or not a particular area is within a few hours' reach, but by and large my experience has been one of reflection and learning in Hollow Knight. This is a cornerstone in any skill-based game, and not at all dissimilar to any other skill-based activity, like playing a musical instrument or juggling, or tennis. Going through Hollow Knight has me thinking a fair bit about The Inner Game of Tennis, an evergreen book by instructor Timothy Galway that is a wide-reaching text on performance psychology only wearing the cloak of a book about tennis. One of the early ideas Galway presents is separating judgment from analysis, not letting self-1 get in the way of self-2, in his own terms he sets up. The ability to be able to reflect on how an approach did or did not work without attaching self-worth is nigh paramount to whether or not one will have the ability to derive pleasure from their hobby in question. And I did not miswrite or misspeak either. Without being able to separate yourself as an actor and yourself as a human being, I can speak from experience that your road terminates in self-pity at best and deep-seated misery and resentment at worst. The scope of this episode is far too narrow and distant from this idea to explore much further, but Hollow Knight is neither unfair nor insurmountable. It gives players, those who are willing to analyze their failures and grow from them without the attachments of emotion. It gives players all of the tools, and then some, as well as teachable moments to hone in skills in a sensible way, always building off of what came before. I'm reminded of Celeste in some ways. Hollow Knight is unapologetically difficult at times and doesn't pull its punches, but it wants you to succeed. It gives you every tool that you need, even tools that may cover the arrows you lack in your own personal skill set quiver, to see things through to the end. Games like this, games that challenge you to be better than you were before, combined with a fan base that invites you in and cheers you on, that wants to see you succeed as much as or more than they want to see success for themselves, that is what Get Good means to me. It's a shame that a minority has poisoned this idea, but that is the way of things on the internet. There's plenty more to say about Hollow Knight. The use of color in its art design, the exploration aspect and level design being virtually fat-free, how it utilizes opaque storytelling. For fear of double dipping into the upcoming episode and for writing at length prior to actually having a full picture of the game, I'll just end with this. Hollow Knight surprised me. And while it maybe didn't surprise you, this could be a good reminder or a good invitation to take a chance now and then on a game, on a style, on a genre, or even on a medium that you might not expect to be your bag. Give it a shot. You might enjoy it. I played a lot of fighting games this year, and that's a problem. Fighting games are practically a cornerstone in video games that embody Galway's approach that I had alluded to just moments ago, and do nothing if not reward patience insofar as learning the game, the character, the matchup, and most importantly, oneself. But this can occur under subpar circumstances, and that's where my indecisiveness comes into play. I'm terrible at choosing one fighting game and sticking to it, just awful. I'm always tempted to bounce around and sample new things, and by the time I break out of the non-stop cycle of wondering if I'm missing anything better in another game or on another channel, my will and my mind are so fatigued that all I can manage is maybe 15 to 20 minutes in the lab doing combo trials before moving on to something else. I'd be lying if I said the podcast itself isn't a factor as well, but I think this aversion to committing is the real wall here, this propensity and predilection to seeking out new dopamine hits. That all being so, I spent more time with some fighters than others, one of those being Darkstalkers 3. I'd heard a ton about the Darkstalkers series and ended up going through the first 3 entries thanks to the Capcom collection. I liked Darkstalkers 1 perfectly fine and appreciated the updates made to speed and kits in Darkstalkers 2. But after trying Darkstalkers 3, I'm ready to join the chorus of the FGC in singing this game's praises. In fact, depending on the day you ask me, this might be my very favorite 2D fighting game. Although I gotta give my shoutouts to Street Fighter 3 Alpha, Grand Blue Rising, and Pocket Fighter. Darkstalkers has a lot in common with early Street Fighter. The 2D plane, the move kit inputs, the 6-button layout, the varied character kits. But where it branches is in both movement, expression, and visual design. The latter is most plain to see. While classic Street Fighter takes a mostly realistic, if not movie-ified or comic-ified kind of aesthetic, Darkstalkers combines Spirit Halloween and the 90s era of Hot Topic, or something like that. The roster features werewolves, mummies, catgirls, succubi zombies, and even Little Red Riding Hood with a submachine gun. It's sick. And a lot of the sheen the visuals boast is from Darkstalkers being birthed in the arcade. I didn't grow up with arcades, so forgive me if any of this sounds artificially rose-tinted or even flat-out inaccurate, but the arcade machine's screen is a fascinating thing. The slight curve of it, the ever-present hum, the brightness capabilities combined with the sharp and popping colors many of the games had loaded into them. It's an experience that you'd be hard-pressed to replicate onto modern hardware, even on the best of the CRT. Darkstalkers certainly takes advantage of this. The sum of the character and wardrobe designs, the fighting locales, and the color palette practically writes bodacious or pizzazz right on the screen. The purpose, of course, is to attract quarters to the machine and then to the venue owner, but it's not just to that end. This unique setup, the arcade machine and its screen and the general places it might show up, this let the artists flex their creativities. Not to mention, this all welcomes a contrast from the striking but more reserved Street Fighter or the darker, quote-unquote, more mature Mortal Kombat. Expression of movement is a bit different from the aforementioned fighters as well. And I should say up front, whilst I do consider myself a lover of fighting games, I am about as casual as can be. So veterans of the genre may find my thoughts on mechanics a bit sophomoric or surface level. Darkstalker 3's movement in general is quicker, leading to a more improvisatory, on-your-feet kind of thinking than a more patient, always thinking 2 moves ahead style of play a la Street Fighter 2, or practically all of Tekken. Characters can hit the edge of the screen, or the wall, and bounce off. Others can float or even double jump. These, combined with the genre staples of a 6-button attack layout, attack canceling, and the like, all lead to more interesting poke opportunities and offensive pressure. And of course, the presence of air dashes and air blocking cannot be overlooked. This is the selling point for a lot of people and allows and rewards both risks and reads. Air dashing and blocking are typically seen as characteristics of anime fighters. Your Guilty's Gear, your Grand Blues Rising, your Under Night's In-Birth, and Melty Blood, they're all great examples of anime fighters. Whereas non-anime fighters tend to be grounded and with a slider set somewhere between upper moderate and slow pace of play, anime fighters have no restrictions. Movement is brisk and even at times frantic, with little to no restrictions on air dashing, air blocking, double jumps, hyper jumps, and more. This leads to play favoring rushdowns and offense, and, to many players' eyes, more exciting gameplay. Generally, I myself like the opposite approach, a more footsies-based, methodical pace of play, always thinking 2 steps ahead, just planning on the spot. But something about Darkstalkers 3 just kept pulling me in. Maybe it's a combination of everything, the ripping speed and the Street Fighter kits, and the edgy appearance and the bumpin' soundtrack. Maybe the amalgam supersedes the individual parts to create something special. This underdog, the weirder little brother of a game that's pretty cool once you get to know him, and could, in all honesty, teach you, the bigger Street Fighter brother, a thing or two while still having a lot to learn from you. If that all sounds appealing, this Halloween-tinged, quick-paced underdog of 2D fighters that, despite all its present-day obscurity, still maintains a passionate fanbase, give Darkstalkers 3 a go. Yakuza 3, or known better by its sobriquet on the internet, Lakuza. It's always fun going into a game that's scoffed at from an otherwise beloved series. Why does it get the hate? What makes it meaningfully different from the rest of the series? Will I enjoy this? I'm sure I could parse out the former questions, but the latter, I can confidently say that yes, I did enjoy it. Quite a bit, actually. Although it is, of course, not quite so simple to leave it at that. Let's get it out there, let's talk turkey. Out of all of the parts making up this game, the story, the music, the acting, it's the combat that is the bruised apple of the bunch. I didn't mean to insert so many food metaphors, I don't know why I did that. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the internet makes it out to be, though. Peruse any Yakuza thread or forum and you will see scores of folks suggesting to not even play this, to just watch a summary, or the cutscenes. Although, in fairness, this take has been losing favor over the past couple of years. The ire toward its gameplay isn't entirely unwarranted, though. It's far and away the most dated of the Yakuza games that are most accessible in 2025, or probably even now in early 2026, depending on when you're listening. Movement isn't as refined, and you get that sort of PS2 or PS3 weightlessness, most noticeable when running and or turning. You just sort of float over the concrete. It's not quite as bad as the Bouncer or the Quiet Man, but it's somewhat noticeable and a little distracting. But that wasn't the point of frustration for me. It was the 1-2 punch of blocking and stun locking. I will admit, I had my fair share of expletives when doing some of these fights. The moniker Blockuza came about because enemies tend to block a lot. And blocking in Yakuza is significant because it prevents a lot of damage and opens Kiryu up for parries or counters on his cooldown frames. There's also the issue of multiple enemies that can get at you from all sides, which is the bigger threat in your run-of-the-mill street encounters. There isn't any canceling in this game as far as I'm aware, so this happened to me quite a bit. It's this sort of thing that makes battles take a bit more time. This and the stun locking. The stun locking. Sometimes I wondered if the enemies could see out of my monitor and into my eyes, if they could see the hope and the flicker of enjoyment just being snuffed out, laughing like the perverts they are. If you're unfamiliar with stun locking, when an enemy hits you in a fighting game, your character has a hit animation. Sometimes it's a fall, sometimes it's a knockback, but this animation takes a certain number of frames to complete. Some knockbacks or knockdowns take more frames, and if an enemy is able to hit you during those frames, it starts the whole process over. This then can create a stun lock, a perpetual loop of you being put into your hit animation over and over and over again. I don't know why, but this happens a lot in Yakuza 3. Battles already take longer because of the enemy's predilection for blocking, so getting caught in a stun lock can be particularly frustrating. It's not like you'll get 0 to death like in a Smash or an MVC2 Infinite combo, and the notion of intelligent play from the enemies isn't what erodes player enjoyment. It's not intelligent play at all, in fact. I mean, if it were, thugs and baddies would use more offensive pressure outside of boss battles and take advantage of their greater numbers. The real crux of it is not just the time tax, but it takes away from one of the most fundamental thrills of a Yakuza game, being a badass motherfucker. Having to spend heaps of minutes whittling down a street thug's endurance as the famed Dragon of Dojima isn't just at odds with the narrative, it's incredibly tedious to get through. Encounters in other Yakuza games aren't necessarily easier in the most prescriptive sense of the word, but they are more exciting, fast-paced, more enemies, more aggression. Sometimes this amounts to battles being over quicker and taking less strategy from the player's end. Perhaps this is quote-unquote easy. But I'd take that over an endurance test with Suzuki Sixpack, the local street tough, who wants to jump me just because he doesn't like the cut of my jib, him there bwaha-haing me, and me, the Dragon of Dojima, regularly catching the breath of Yakuza bigwigs when they hear my name, throwing haymakers and elbow drops that do tiddlywinks on the damage counter, all because Mr. Sixpack is able to block my moves. Are you kidding me? So it's here that I offer my best advice to you for Yakuza 3. Just set the difficulty to easy, at least for the non-boss battles. And certainly don't let the reputation throw you off. Some of the best story beats in the earlier titles are in this game, and the depth of character in Dad Mode Kiryu and accompanying companions is, at times, touching, and at others, a hype fest. The slow burn of the beginning was one of my favorite parts of the game. We spent the last 3 installments seeing Kiryu as the stuff of legends, a deadly combination of quietly confident, having a sense of justice and insane strength to back it all up. Kiryu is the power fantasy many of us had as young boys, and why wouldn't we? He's handsome, he dresses well, he gets swooned over frequently. And through it all, he never loses his cool. Who wouldn't look up to him? This is in large part why the orphanage sections worked so well for me, and I submit to you, work so well in general. The nobility and respect Kiryu demands doesn't only come from his machismo, it comes from a tender and loving heart. He is a force of destruction, but only to those who would wrong the innocent, the downtrodden, and the vulnerable. He is a beacon of care and, pardoning some of his Yakuza-esque tendencies, morality, valuing above all teaching his newfound children what it means to be a light in a cold world, and even extending this olive branch to those he beats in battle from time to time. This is a role model worth emulating, one who knows the importance of being physically active, who pays no heed to gender normativity to act as sole caregiver to children, who actively encourages and fights for the LGBT community throughout his escapades, someone whose guiding principles seem to be honor yourself, be kind to others, and love and protect those dear to you. This entry in the Yakuza timeline isn't the only one to showcase this side of Kiryu, of course not, but it does so strongly and proudly. It rounds out Kiryu in a way that does not aim to fend off the more bro-y who admire him for how much ass he can beat, but to invite them in. It's cool to care. In this way, Yakuza 3 embodies what the series moving forward aimed to be. With the upcoming Kiwami remaster, I'm looking forward to hearing more chatter about it. I haven't played the entirety of the series, and so I can't claim to know the true core of what it is to be holistically, but I think this is closer than not. Yakuza 3 is a good game if you're willing to stick it out and have a little surplus of patience for both the pacing and the blocking. I would not recommend watching a cutscene compilation or reading a story synopsis. I would recommend, with my full chest, going through and experiencing Dad Mode Kiryu. Stellar Blade surprised me right out of the gate, and continued to do so as the game went forward. This game was and is marred by online discourse, a now pastime that I like less and less each time I hear about it or talk about it. Though I won't get into any of that here today, I largely find it, and honestly, yes, most social media discourse, to be asinine and myopic and completely bereft of critical thought. I wanted to see for myself what this game was about, beyond all of the noise. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hesitant, though. It's difficult to hear some of the worst people you've come to know against your own will on the internet go on and on extolling how something is good because it owns the woke, or because it shows how stupid the people I don't like are. So I'm sure that I hit play for the first time with some level of bias, conscious or no. Humans are hardwired that way, and it takes effort to swim against the stream. If you take nothing else away from this entry, let it be to not fall into that trap and always let your own opinion form from experiences and not sarcastic, pithy put-downs and reposts on Instagram or Blue Sky or Gaia Online or wherever you spend your time on the internet these days. Getting back to business though, back to Stellar Blade. For a studio doing this kind of game for the first time, they really came out swinging and had some kind of fire under their ass. It's not a perfect game. Its roughest edges lie with all things writing, from narrative structure to character dialogue to character relations, development, and verisimilitude, this latter being far and away the most clumsy in my opinion. In spite of these flaws, I enjoyed the time I spent getting to know this game, and the more I think about it, I think it comes down to the influence it took from Bayonetta on the aesthetics and ideology of style. Depending on whom you ask, this game lives and dies on style. And it's more true than not. One look at the opening hour shows an abridged view of what the audience is in for. Grotesque beasts and monsters, sci-fi trappings and technology, combat animations that are polished and practically glint, and pretty women. For me, this checks a lot of boxes. In particular, the animations are a treat. It's clear that close attention was paid toward everything from the camera angles to the way muscles and limbs move to even how the characters' other body parts react to different moves. An example being how Eve might turn her neck when doing certain motions. This all might sound painfully obvious and elementary to those who have worked in animation before, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that I'm just simply not articulating some of what I absorb through my eyes and into my brain, but the end result is the same. A sleekly refined visual presentation that feels fast but not floaty, weighty but not over-encumbered. And being that such care is put into the combat animations, it should be mentioned that it's a fairly engaging system. Hack-and-slash veterans may not be as giddy with what's on offer. There's no denying that this isn't Bayonetta or Platinum, but Stellar Blade sits in an interesting section of the Venn diagram of stylish action and, believe it or not, Souls games. Preface to Souls experts: do not take what I say without a heaping tablespoon of salt. But being the difficulty and the defensive focus being largely on parrying and dodging, and a lot of this game being focused around large bosses whose patterns you need to learn and react to, it seemed to me to be at least somewhat of an apposite analogy. The offense then takes more influence from your third-person hack and slashes, the DNA found in Bayonetta or Devil May Cry or Scarlet Nexus maybe. Couple this with a decent upgrade system for a variety of buffs and lurid, ostentatious displays of flexibility and deadliness, and beating the snot out of ugly beasties, and baby, you've got a stew going. A stylish, tantalizing stew. Now this is all terrific, of course. Those last few points are what put the stellar into Stellar Blade, if you'll forgive that horrific line. The opening is really quite something, and I had an inkling that this might be way high up on my end-of-the-year list as I was going through it. For all its strengths, though, the game trips the most over, really, to be candid with you, anything related to dialogue or writing. The story itself is serviceable. It's perfectly fine, not breaking new ground and all but pointing you toward its conclusion. Eve's relationships with her squad mates, new and old, pique interest here and there throughout the story, but are noticeably lacking. And now that I'm writing this, I think lacking is the incorrect descriptor. A lack of something implies that it is present, just in an insufficient amount. When it comes to Stellar Blade's character relations and whether the world around them feels alive, absent is the dead ringer here. There simply isn't anything in the game that makes me believe the fiction of the universe. That's not to say there aren't side quests or NPCs, there are plenty, and a few of them tell micro-stories, sure, but most of them amount to, please look for my friend or colleague or partner. The friend is inevitably dead, Eve relays this, and the quest giver goes mild. It's like it doesn't even matter. But they exist if you want some distraction throughout the game or some time to practice combat, farm for skill points and money, and buy new stuff or upgrades. The real nail for me is the relationships between Eve, Adam, and Lily, or hell, even between Eve and the world around her. So little attention is paid to this that its absence sort of demands your attention and becomes, perversely, a total focal point. And this ultimately comes down to the writing. The voice acting is perfectly fine and the animations are top-notch, and yet despite pristine outward appearances, the unified whole does not succeed. If there is an Achilles heel to this game, it lies here, which is a real shame. There was attention to detail, the real focus on the minutiae throughout the rest of what makes this such a strong entry, fun combat, seriously impressive visuals, music that doesn't fall solely into AAA cliches. But in games like this, narrative is a load-bearing structure, and weakness proves disastrous. But although I saved my biggest gripe for last, and it is, to be fair, a real big one, I'm hopeful for the studio's future. As far as debut titles at this sort of scale go, Stellar Blade is a solid, strong first go of it. And I think at the end of it all, that's the feeling I came away with the most. A strong interest in what the next entry from them might be. I'm glad I played Stellar Blade, and it's certainly a good game. And I hope their next one will be even better. I'll be there for it. My artistic diet contains a lot of calorically dense works. This is both pretentious and true. But in an age where the term slop has unfortunately and accurately described a lot of what's being doled out on every storefront, in and outside of the gaming space, it's more important than ever to seek out challenging works, be they games or literature, movies or music. The analogy of a diet is an apropos one, both in terms of variety and measured indulgence, but also in terms of a work's nutritional qualities. Being calorically dense is to be challenging, to eschew a spoon-fed dopamine hit by asking engagement and thought and conscious effort, effectively doubling or tripling the reward by not only the merit of the work itself, but also the value one gets through earning the understanding, a sort of conversation between player or reader or watcher and the author, something Nabokov was really into and Barthes wasn't so much. I know that I certainly feel a feeling of pride after finishing something difficult. Even if I feel I understood maybe only 70% of it and make up the rest through secondary sources, it's still more than I understood yesterday. And that feeling is empowering. By losing this, by expecting a work to tell us everything top to bottom with no margin for error, we are agreeing to a corrosive passivity that begins at a casual disengagement and progresses to indifference and eventually, the way I see it personally, the total extinction of all but short-form, scrolling bullshit. But balance is key, and just as blithe consumption has its downfalls, so too does the sort of asceticism that comes with the pretentious guy who, quote, only reads the classics and scoffs at you. Caloric density can get exhausting, and there's nothing inherently wrong with treats or food that is bad for you. Take a trip to Taco Bell and tell me I'm wrong. I won't listen to you, but you can. Point is this. Enjoyment for enjoyment's sake doesn't have to be a bad thing. So starting Lunar, Silver Star story, and experiencing this light-hearted sort of game was a breath of fresh air, a much-needed break from other thematically heavier works with something bubbly and sweet. It's not that Lunar doesn't have anything to say, so much as it doesn't focus on it or put that as the primary fuel in its engine. It wants you to have fun. The same kind of fun you had playing these JRPGs as a kid or watching anime on Toonami. And without fun, you'll never get the enjoyment and satisfaction to proceed to the more difficult and fulfilling on a deeper spiritual level sort of works. You can say the same about music or film or reading. I could tell within the first hour that this was going to be a game for me. With its pluckiness and feel-good dynamics of a shonen anime, the music befitting a classic JRPG of halcyon days, and a visual design emphasizing what made, and I'm making scare quotes here, retro JRPGs so goddamn charming. Visuals are almost always the first impression, and I am a sucker for this era of aesthetics. The diorama-esque models, that I'll be bringing up more moving forward, have an eternal and effervescent pleasantness to them. To me, they emphasize the theatricality of the genre, the excitement of a stage play that we, you and I, have a hand in just by playing. Here's a fact for you. Most modern games, and certainly role-playing games, can trace a direct lineage to Dungeons & Dragons. If you've never had the pleasure of playing, Dungeons & Dragons is something of an exercise in acting. Convincing players will embody their characters in speech and mannerisms, to an appropriate extent, aiming to make transparent the walls between the fiction and the potentially dank basement in which one might be playing. The advancement to audio-visual entertainment proved to be a near total boon, but there's a theatricality that's lost when agency is taken away from the player in service of written dialogue and pre-planned presentation. Through this presentation, though, this visual presentation, a different angle of theatricality can be added back in, which is one of the reasons that the aesthetics of Lunar and its contemporaries are so delightful. Visualization mimics the actual theater, though blocking the stage directions, all of it. And I'm sure in some ways they remind me of playing with action figures. But when you get right down to it, that isn't dissimilar. The theater, the action figures, even the game of pretend with a friend, it's all about capital P play. And that's what's important. That's what is in the marrow of the bones of this genre. And speaking of action figures, the battle system may take you back to those days too. It's turn-based, as you might expect, but adds a tactical element of distance in battles. You have to move your guys. If they're too far away, selecting attack will have them only move as close as they can. This adds at least a minor level of strategy to the game, as some characters will be fleeter of foot than others. Outside of this, it does admittedly play out largely similar to other JRPGs. You go on your hero's journey, your childhood friend goes from the quasi-ingenue longing for more to the one you must save. You're joined by a party of varied misfits, rascals, and goobers. Lunar isn't looking to subvert the genre and has no desire to. It's more of a celebration of sorts to what caused so many of us, myself included, to fall in love with JRPGs in the first place. Orson Welles famously called this the homage and said of it, quote, "the most detestable habit in all of modern cinema," end quote. There is an entire discussion to be had on this regarding originality of voice and such forth, but Lunar isn't an homage, it's a love letter. How distinct those are to you, I cannot say. The musical score cannot be ignored before we move on to the next entry. You've been hearing it throughout if you've managed to get past my mellifluous baritone, but I'll conclude by saying this. The music is wildly underrated. Composed by Horiyuki Iwadare, Lunar's score shines with character. The insistent positivity of Ramus's "Have a Big Dream" inspires a sense of a weekend morning, a good-hearted adventure on a day off school, and a sort of harmless naivety. Meribia, the track which shares the name with a larger affluent city, its punctuating horns adding pops to the strolling flute melody. The Sega CD's original intro, just a straight-up badass hair metal adjacent track that's going to play this entry out if I have anything to say about it. And of course, Luna's famous aria, Wind's Nocturne, otherwise known as the boat song. A vulnerable moment of ennui sees Luna sing this song to herself, Alex and Nall listening on in the shadows, a direct callback to musical theater's character songs. Her small-town upbringing giving way to feelings of unrealized fulfillment and a deep desire for more are musically represented by the 2/5 chords in succession that propel the harmonic rhythm, continually searching for a resolution. Or perhaps also by the major to minor shifts, particularly on the 4 chord, adding a classic feeling and tone heard in laments and ballads in the Beatles and Bing Crosby. All of this enhances Luna and the words she sings, affect on full display, before a prominent pivot chord lowers the key center from A to A flat. The modulation being abrupt gives it more weight than the modulations of the Baroque period, set up in a rolling wave that seeks to not disturb the listener. But even more so, this gives Luna's voice a skosh more room to project, to bring her emotions to the fore. with the sort of resolute questioning to the universe that only happens when one is truly alone. And all of this gives me goosebumps because not only am I a sentimental son of a bitch, but because I love the schmaltzy saccharine cheese that musical theater can dish out. It's an intimate, beautiful moment, fully animated, and moving in a way that no other JRPG I have seen has captured in a musical number. It was a bit of a risk, and the game doesn't really do anything like it moving forward. But in some ways, doing more of the same would have diminished the impact of this moment. A moment entirely devoted to the feeling we've all felt, that there's something more, that the feeling of living life waits for us out there, beyond the streets and small towns that saw us grow. That resonates with me. A lot of this entry on the list, I've talked more around Lunar than about it. I can't say it was by design, it's just how the words came out. I thought about editing it down to be more, quote, on topic, but that's never what this episode was supposed to be about. My aim was to explain why these games touched me when I played them this year, what made them special in their own ways, not a comprehensive analysis or a rundown you could read on Wikipedia. Lunar's plot, the moment-to-moment dialogue, Victor Ireland's propensity toward pop culture puns, these are all charming enough on their own to varying degrees, but they're just part of a greater whole. Lunar embodies so much more than that. As I said earlier, it's so much of what made me and many others love this genre in the first place. I could sit here and tell you about Lunar, and I could read the Wikipedia and give you the cursory internet rundown you could find in a million other places, but would that really say anything to you? Because it sounds totally dull to me. The work of Kazutaka Kodaka can be a bit polarizing. It's a very strong taste that many will either avoid or devour. I wouldn't say I neatly fit into the latter, though I have really enjoyed everything I've played by him and his team so far. I knew going into the 100-line Last Defense Academy that I would enjoy it. What I did not know was that I would come to see it as Kodaka's best work to date, and that it would spring that all-too-familiar trap of just one more cycle, just one more day, just one more game, that throws all schedules into a tangle. Choosing one word to define 100-line would be difficult. It's campy, it's boisterous, it's pop art-tinged sci-fi, it's very anime. I'm not convinced that this is the best word for it, I couldn't make an argument on it, but if I were asked, I might settle on confident. There are works that position themselves to be something and get so caught up in convincing you, the player, that they are said thing, that they actively want you to walk away with that association in your mind, sort of glancing up at you side-eyed asking, you get it, right? You understand? When I see these games, it becomes clear to me that in fact the game is trying to convince itself. Final Fantasy XVI demonstrated this to me, a cloying display of grit and HBO that it felt like it wanted to convince itself as a series that it was still in touch and not out of date, which in itself is a notion that may or may not prove it's out of touch. At any rate, this sort of obsequiousness towards players is far removed from 100-line. It isn't asking you to understand it, or like it, or convince you that you should give it a chance or be in your good graces. It's here, goddammit. And it's going to do its thing. And if you want on that roller coaster, well then step right up, Pally, because the seats are open, the carts embrace their garish colors, and if you're anything like me, you might get right back in line as soon as it's over. Kodaka and his team's best-known work is, obviously, Danganronpa, and much of that influence is on the sleeves of 100-line. In fact, those less familiar with these works would be forgiven in asking whether or not this was just Danganronpa 3 or 4 or something. 100-line zigs where Danganronpa might zag in two key areas, gameplay and story. And depending on who you ask, you'll get a different answer as to which is the jewel of the game. I'm not convinced that there's a right answer, but anecdotally, the thing that I have heard grabs people's attention first in trailers or on storefronts is the tactical combat. And this, the gameplay, is undoubtedly a key part of what makes 100-line 100-line. Danganronpa experimented with adding a bit more gameplay, quote-unquote, in its successor, but 100-line added it in a full-out tactical combat element. And it isn't just a throwaway concession, there's a lot of it. Playing this side by side with Final Fantasy Tactics was fascinating, as they share this tactical DNA but are otherwise distinct experiences in just about every single way. There's less customization in 100 Line, but the differences between each playable character are interesting enough to keep the gameplay varied. Couple in the steady drip feed of playable characters across the game's first route and the feeling of excitement for what's to come around the corner, a feeling that's always sort of vibrating in each of the blaring sirens signifying an upcoming battle, and a hook is cast. Will this be the day Character X joins the battle? Is Character Y still too scared to fight, or will they have their anime entrance to save the day? Once the rhythm of the story is set up, these moments can be guessed fairly easily, but I never came away from them feeling pandered to or that they were overtly hackneyed. I had a few, yes, that's my boy, and oh, I can't believe she did that moments as each character grew into a version of themselves that could not only survive in this world's reality, but do so with a will to protect those around them, the other unwilling participants that they have come to love through a mutual tragic fate. It's hardly new ground, to be sure, but it doesn't feel stale. Veterans to Kodaka's works will recognize the flavor and flair of the aesthetics and music almost immediately. I've heard this art style described as being very hot topic, and while I can appreciate a chuckle for what that's getting at, I think a more fitting description would be anime pop art fringed with a bit of horror and a bit of edge. It's not as succinct or punchy or retweetable or rolling off the tongue, but I think it hits the bullseye. As I said before, this is either appealing or a total repellent, depending on one's taste. For myself, each character's wardrobe, their personality quirks, their postures, and overall summoned substance worked quite well. I loved the innocence turned independence of Kako, the swaggering boisterousness of Takemaru, the ever-changing balance of tomboy and girl's girl of Tsubasa, who is low-key the best, and of course, the sugar-crazed, hot topic mascot, if there ever was one, hysteria of Darumi. Endearing though they may be, they do err toward self-caricature and become a bit one-note. Moko, the wrestler, for example, will rephrase any new information or give thoughts on an upcoming battle entirely in wrestling lingo. The daughter of nobility will line every bit of dialogue with self-aggrandizing insults to peasants or poverty. The whole thing gets a little grating. And I can see how it could be off-putting to newcomers. The truth is, though, that it's just part of Kodaka's style. And admittedly, it's even a little better here than in Danganronpa. It's much more abrasive there. It's a bit to which his team is committed, though, which in some ways makes it easier to swallow. You can't approach this expecting Kentucky Route Zero levels of writing. But then again, that isn't what's promised on the tin. It seems to me that Kodaka isn't interested in verisimilitude so much as attitude. The guy at the bar who's always pushing for one more round, because how can you not live in the moment? And as much as you need to get to work in the morning, it's hard to turn down that kind of good-natured charisma. All in all, it's a package distinctly Kodaka and would be an almost ideal entry point to his catalog for newcomers, especially given the ratio of visual novel to gameplay. Visual novel veterans have their cake too. 100 Line earns the moniker by having a literal 100 endings, and shockingly, so far I've only seen a handful that are schlocky or hastily written number padding. In fairness, I am not even close to cracking the halfway mark of 50 endings, but even still, had you told me this before I'd play the game, I might have said, get the fuck out of here. But holistically, somehow, the parts coalesce into a sometimes chic, sometimes garish, sometimes elbow in the sides romp. And it's mostly always a good time. World building is one of the most important things a JRPG can give me. My first two JRPGs were Pokemon Blue and Final Fantasy IX, respectively. I wouldn't necessarily compare the two as they're too different, but in each of their own confines, they make efforts to create a world that exists beyond the plot of the player characters. That first step into the affluent Celadon city, which boasts a department store and a gambling joint for children that surely by now has made an app for it and I think is very cool. Or that initial arrival, that's a joke by the way, or that initial arrival in Burmecia, tasting the forlorn memories that hang in the air, curtains of sadness that can never be fully opened and let the light in. These are games that seek to invite players into a fiction that extends beyond the hero's quest plot beats. I'd always heard that the Trails series could run a masterclass on this. This is, in fact, true. The Legend of Heroes, Trails in the Sky, first chapter, here on out, just Trails, was nearly love at first sight for me. I had mentioned in Lunar my love for diorama-style presentations. Because of the time, Lunar aired more toward a mixture of diorama and board game. The Sega CD was only so powerful after all. Trails takes this design philosophy up one notch by interpreting character sprites throughout the world as sort of chibi adjacent. Their large heads atop their comparatively small shoulders as they run through the world, stubby little arms and legs moving in tandem, eyes large and mouths practically non-existent outside of proper character portraits. Running around through this world impresses upon you its scale fairly quickly. Trails lives up to its reputation as a world built from the bottom up with a host of varied locales interconnected by grassy paths and rocky terrain. While some of the interstitials became a little samey, a sameness that's offset by the dev-included fast-forward button, a real boon if you're grinding, which is unnecessary, or side-questing, the cornerstones of the game, the cities and towns proper, felt all their own, each with citizens and inhabitants with their own lives and their own problems. Even the locations where you're only passing through feel realized. This all creates a fictional world that sort of dissolves the drive to power through, to do all the quests as fast as possible and to run onward to the next quest marker and finish that game and mark it on the trendy game tracker and post your stats in a Discord server, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, here's my quick thoughts that really earn you your stripes and respect as a gamer. No, this is a game with a simple proposition. Slow down. Enjoy the moment in which you are alive. Spend time in our little corner. You might like it here. I had heard rumblings about the more recent entries of Trails and how the tone of the series has shifted. At the time of recording, I'm playing the Trails FC remake, and the shift is very obvious. Anime tropes, especially visual gags like ridiculous eye animations, the ones the big white circles with the tiny little dot in them, are far more prevalent, and quirky online slang, like eepy instead of sleepy, comes up more often than I'd like. The original FC isn't so on the nose with these, though. They exist, sure, but in a more watered-down way, a half-whisper instead of a shout. This is all par for the course in the land of anime. But these tropes and cutesyisms and referential but copyright-distinct neologisms are just flavor, not the lion's share of the writing. The character dialogue proper isn't overly florid or turgid or up its own ass like you might find in other JRPGs either. This is a coming-of-age story, and our two protagonists are 16 years old and looking to cut their teeth and graduate out of the junior leagues and into the ranks of senior bracers. Estelle is a lovable, headstrong loudmouth, a bit of a brat, but the sort of person that's difficult to stay mad at for too long. She embodies what I now, in retrospect, remember the age of 16 to be. Headstrong and mouthy, scoffing at being told what to do even if I had no idea what to do myself, thinking that I knew better than everyone around me. But Estelle really is a sweetheart when you get right down to it, which is nurtured out of her more and more throughout the story by the means of all of her companions, and especially her adopted brother Joshua, for whom she has strong romantic feelings. Always being looked at as the little sister, never having her feelings noticed, and never having the courage to articulate them. Simply youth. But as pleasing and fuzzy feeling inducing as the development of your computer screen friends is, you've got to be in it for the long haul. The Trails series is notoriously long, and in truth, playing FC is only a third of the story. The entire first arc, Trails FC, Trails SC, first chapter, second chapter, and Trails the third, tells one comprehensive story, one story that sets up the universe for the rest of the series. This is, to me, not a bad thing in the slightest. One of my favorite JRPG series is Xenosaga, a game which routes its story in much the same way across 3 games and technically a few canonical side projects. But with trust in a capable author's vision, series like these are enhanced by a continued familiarity. The idea of starting a new series like this, or like Xenosaga or Yakuza, it is daunting. It can be scary. Getting to know new people and new places in our actual lives can be exciting, yes, but it also has a large mental energy tax. This isn't dissimilar to beginning a new work of fiction, literature, video game, film series, wherein you're in it for the long haul. How much easier it would be to kick back with the characters you know so well, to visit cities in which you hardly need a map to know your way around, to sit in the known and be comfortable. Comfort is important, but it can cripple if abused. Starting a series that sprawls like this is intimidating, there's no getting around it, but that previously mentioned authorial continuity satisfies like no other in works of fiction. To spend hours upon hours, months, and perhaps even years in a world about which and with characters for whom you care so much creates a sort of literary family. Looking back on Lunar, I realized that Trails shares some of the JRPG-ness that I enjoyed so much there. The turn-based battle system also has a distance and tactical element to it, which can make for some genuine strategy, especially on the 3D plane if you're playing the remake. In addition to equipment, Trails uses orbments, an in-game energy resource that can do, basically anything, to be honest with you. In battle, they give stat buffs and debuffs as well as magic abilities. This world is somewhat more sensible in terms of JRPG logic. People don't just inherently shoot fire out of their hands or fly, they need orbments, tools, to do this for them. It's not dissimilar to Final Fantasy VII's materia system insofar as customization is a big draw. Everyone is a little different in terms of what kinds of orbments they can use, but it isn't so prescriptive that experimentation is ill-advised. Or impossible. It made battles more interesting for me, configuring what might make sense where and with whom for showdowns that maybe required more defense versus offense or more buffs versus straight elemental damage. This contrasts just enough from games like FF7 or Chrono Cross to give some interest, at least as far as I'm concerned. And speaking of battles, there are so many JRPG battle themes that can be exhausting due to overexposure. I'd mentioned Chrono Cross before, which is an obvious contender, but even the more popular JRPGs like Final Fantasy and Pokemon, especially, begin to wear with the self-serious sort of style. Trails, at least FC from what I've seen, falls into the Persona camp. Battles are fun, and the music should be fun. It's been so long since I found a battle theme that I really love, and Trails gave that to me. The piano or piano patch in its high tessitura introducing the theme that gives way to the horns, the driving percussion, the overall character just giving the right mix of bravado, youthful confidence, and stakes. It's simply perfect. Trails' soundtrack as a whole is near this too. It lacks the drama that you'd find in Matsuda, Uematsu, and Shimomura, but it makes up for this in a larger sense of calm and wonder, introspection and care. The sort of tender serenity that many of us haven't felt since our youths, which is sad. That's not to say that dramatic battle music that makes situations very tense, clench your teeth sort of music doesn't exist. It is in here, but by and large, it's not what I remember. It's the slow and the calm, much like Trails as a series itself. It's not about high adrenaline. It's about making this moment count. And like Lunar, how this isn't talked about as much, the soundtrack, I'll never know. Like the Xeno series, Trails is going to be a long haul for me. Sorry, Yakuza, you've been usurped, fair and square, at least for now. The fanbase isn't a vocal minority in the pejorative sense, but spend any time in any JRPG subreddit and you'll hear them. The series is peak, give it a try. I did give it a try, and it seems like they're right. I read the internet a lot, and my understanding is that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 saved turn-based combat. I had written a joke in the first draft of this document, but since this talking point has been played out to oblivion, I invite you to imagine a joke instead. Just imagine me saying it. Imagine how funny it is and I am, and then give the podcast a 5-star rating. Visit patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. I don't remember when exactly I heard about Clair Obscur. I think it was around a time a tweet went semi-viral dunking on the name, which is a ridiculous thing to think about. We should all get off social media. Whenever it was, I was immediately anticipating the release. Many were. Whenever it was, I watched the trailer shortly after and was immediately anticipating the release. Many were. It birthed a lot of hype, and with these sorts of rumblings comes a lot of reticence and doubt and general hackles raising. I wasn't sure what to think either. Well, it told me what to think, and in no uncertain terms, within the first few hours of play. This game is good. Great, even. A completely unexpected hit, a show-stoppingly powerful debut, only heightened by the status of being the quote new kid, the underdog by sheer identity of new kid on the block. It's been on the lips and minds of gamers ever since, and it's easy to see why. It excels in almost everything it sets out to do. I'm hesitant to say much about the story or even the themes of the story for fear of spoiling minor ideas or paths, as I think this is a game best experienced blind for the first time. I'll say this though, the things Clair Obscur sets out to narratively articulate, I think have become passé and almost banal over the last few years. Close your eyes and throw a dart at the indie category on Steam and you're bound to hit something exploring these same themes. Mostly with varying degrees of finesse, more often than not, a little too schmaltzy or clunky or obvious for my taste. A moratorium can be put on these writing points, and I don't think we would be worse off from it. Nevertheless, Clair Obscur walks these roads steadily and confidently. And I think much like 100 Line, that word, confident, is half of what makes so much of this game work. Because in truth, there isn't anything genre-defining or innovative in much of anything that's happening here. We've seen turn-based battles before. We've seen parrying and dodge mechanics in JRPGs before. We've seen complex character customization before, with materials that gives you skills and costs points to use. It's the marriage of the particulars of each of these, the flat-out bustedness that excites. It's all painted in such a way that everything complements one another. It all blends together in such a way that the creator's egos and sense of trying too hard aren't coming through whatsoever. My mild grievances about the narrative themes aside, and truly they are mild, the writing, both for plot structure and character dialogue, and the acting performances are a dance that gracefully and convincingly sells what's being put down. Video game writing, even still, is more often than not pretty good, not great. That's not to say great doesn't exist and hasn't for a long time, as far back as Planescape Torment and Fallout and Elder Scrolls for varying mixtures of dialogue and lore, and as recently as Disco Elysium and Pentiment for everything. I hesitate even to say good rather than pretty good, because I do think that the medium has come a long way, despite much chaff still being in with the wheat. I think that Clair Obscur is great with its writing, and more so with its character dialogue. These characters are believable, at least mostly. They interact with each other in ways that aren't altogether rational at times. And why would they? Can we say that we behave this way in real life, totally rational? Or would we say that we do when in reality we only want to believe that we do? I lean toward the latter. Characters cut each other off mid-sentence, get frustrated with one another, make weak-ass attempts to console and persuade, even sometimes only to serve their self-interest. It's well realized and again, messy, but it isn't all bad. Moments become tender, relationships are handled and depicted with near aplomb in this respect. Renoir's line when he says, "I love them too," for those who know, still gives me chills and makes my throat catch. I will always be a sucker for conflicting points of view in areas of gray. It's become trendy online to scoff and sneer at this. Lord help you, lest you be labeled a cowardly centrist. I'm being a little glib, of course, as it's an entirely different can of worms with regard to political opinion. But like so much of life, Clair Obscur doesn't firmly sit in the dichotomy of right and wrong. I say once more, messy. The wants and desires of characters, of Verso and Renoir and Maël and Lune and all, they're guided by logic and pragmatism and, weighing most of all, emotion. And emotions enhance. Emotions drive, emotions beguile, emotions distort, emotions have the capability to do all of these for good and for ill, and are a powerful force. As all of us know, in periods of great stress and when charges are high, rational thinking goes out the window. And when rational thinking doesn't help a situation, when it actually hinders it, makes things worse, makes everyone pissed off at you, can you guess the adjective I'm going to use? Messy. The discourse, and imagine my shudders at using this word and delving into the internet again, around the endings of this game are perplexing to me. It isn't so much that I find the debate on which is right or wrong to be particularly tiresome, it's the stubbornness. It's the obdurate online posters who balk and condescend toward opposing camps, who think their ending is right, and how could you be so blind not to see this is what the devs intended, and you are so foolish and, Dios mio, media illiterate. Coming from gamers, give me a break. These arguments are myopic in scope, although credit where it's due, I do see a much higher percentage than compared to, The Last of Us 1 and 2, who are not only willing to hear the other side out, but arrive at the oh-so-familiar adjective. This is messy. There is no right and wrong. That's the essence of Clair Obscur. Much like its namesake of chiaroscuro, opposites exist among one another. Opposites exist, can only exist, and heighten one another in character motivations here too. No singular drive in this game, from Renoir or Verso, Mael or Gustave, Lune or Clea, no single drive is without pros and cons. Each believe they are right, for they cannot see the long shadows cast by their own passionate light. This is the core, the foundational layer of Clair Obscur. This is the aspect of writing that impressed me the most. So much more can be said about Clair Obscur. I would be remiss not to mention the music, varied in character and instrumentation, with no ego to be found, as it serves the story with grace and pleasure. I would also be remiss, before wrapping, to point you toward this show's 4-part analysis series on it. I've listened back to portions here and there. Like any critic making any critical reading, some opinions of mine have evolved slightly, but by and large, I'm gonna say, with equal parts pomposity and sincerity, that it's a really, really strong breakdown of what this game has to offer. I would really love it if you checked it out. But ending on self-promotion makes me feel gross, so let me tag this. Clair Obscur is worth every bit of praise you've heard get heaped, shoveled, and pushed onto it. It deserved the glazing. It is that good. As for the future of the studio, for the games that come after, is as apropos a conclusion here as anything else. I can't remember my first introduction to Final Fantasy Tactics as a game that exists in the world, but I do remember my first introduction to its legacy. And you've probably seen this too. This is so silly, I can't help but chuckle. I really can't believe this is what made me aware of this game. A hesitant child stands at the chalkboard, looking at the equation 3 plus 4. He doesn't know the sum. He perspires in the way that we all have done, classmates looking on, so fucking goddamn embarrassed. So he turns around and sees a classmate holding up a sign that says, "The best Final Fantasy." So then, chalk to the board and confident, he writes, "Tactics." It's cute. It's a charming little comic. But it very well might be true. There is no best Final Fantasy. Really, there is not. Final Fantasy IX holds too special a place in my heart to be dethroned, for example. But if ever a game in this franchise could, it would be Tactics. Tactics is good. I won't harp on games writing again for fear of repeating myself and for fear of coming off as an elitist dweeb. Final Fantasy Tactics sidesteps these common writing pitfalls, contrived justifications and motivations, schlocky dialogue, things like this, throughout most of its narrative. Though the stumbles it does make are very Final Fantasy, appropriately enough. It hardly needs saying that the late 20-teens and 2020s have prompted more people than ever to consider the idea of class, to consider wealth distribution, and to ask, where the hell is the justice here? This is the backbone of much, though somewhat unfortunately not all, of Tactics' narrative. In all fairness, it's an evergreen and cross-cultural theme. And depending on your level of well-readedness, you might leave the narrative feeling either newly inspired or like you've gone through a sub-101 refresher. The setup or summarization is easy enough. The royalty, the ruling class, look at the commoners and have-nots with a bitter repugnancy and aim to bolster their own power without considering the needs or rights or safety of the people they supposedly represent and protect. You don't need me to point out the obvious parallels here, do you? What really surprised me about Tactics was the maturity of both the plot's maneuvering through the story and the elegance of the writing which drove it. Upper class good, lower class bad goes beyond genre cliche and into a bona fide how-to kit for fiction itself. We're probably also forgiving of and tolerant towards this because of how goddamn real it is and how real it always has been. Final Fantasy and JRPGs have this scaffolding in spades too, but Tactics takes an approach with more verisimilitude. Take Argath, for example, the bastard of Final Fantasy Tactics. Argath's character expresses something important to the players toward the beginning of the story. The reason he values nobility and honor and men of their word and status so highly, the reason he will stop at nothing to show that he embodies these virtues, is due to his grandfather being labeled a traitor and a yellow-bellied turntail during a conflict in years past. This brought a heavy shame to his lineage and all but had them cast out, the future generations wearing the debt of his cowardice to this day forever stained. Or at least, that's what Argath thinks. It's believable then that someone like Argath would value these highly. He's then manipulated into corruption. The nobility with whom he surrounds himself sees him as a capable soldier and prey upon his insecurities and weaknesses to great ends. So much so that he commits an atrocity early in the game without a second thought. There's even a further wrinkle. His grandfather's treason may not have even been true. Argath becomes a vehicle, a means to an end for the nobility whose boots he licks to further their rise to power. I won't spoil the game here, but Argath's heinous act involves the notion of using an actual human being's safety as a bargaining chip between political families and powers. It doesn't get more real life than this. We see this, we live this. We're living in this now, at the time of writing, seeing insecure Americans beguiled by charismatic politicians who recognize their fear and use it as one uses a cattle prod, leading the scared and now angry exactly where they want them to go, with all the adoration built on fake premises that Argath has for House Beowulf, for Dukes Larg and Goltana, for all with political sway. Welcome to the real world, man. And of course, this isn't strictly an American thing. The story goes that class struggle was inspired not by Japan's history as much as Square Enix's history. Longtime employees were purported to get special treatment, lots of leniency. Much of Tactics' staff were newcomers, so you can imagine how cathartic it may have been to write the story in this way. But it's the gameplay of Tactics that keeps everyone coming back. I hadn't played many tactical RPGs before this. In fact, Fire Emblem Three Houses, may have been my first, unless my Swiss cheese brain has forgotten something again. I had so much friction with this at first, so much. I sent the co-hosts of the analysis series, which you should all listen to, by the way, episodes 155 through 158, patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. I sent them more than a few swear-laden texts. Infamous difficulty curve aside, though, the job system seems endlessly customizable, and I am an absolute sucker for grinding and farming new classes, new abilities, digi-evolutions, you name it. It's a hook that's just very me. I love developing my two strength-based fighters into all manners of dragoons who could use their spear as a ranged attack, or knights with black magic. I loved creating mages who, for some reason, could also break enemy equipment with their hands. And of course, I loved making Ramza a monk dual-wielding his fists for more than a few battles before settling on Dark Knight. And every bit as exciting as the enemy AI. It's actually really good. Mostly really good. It seems like almost every enemy makes considered moves. This makes battles, especially in the early to early middle of the game, have weight and consequence. You might actually die. And God help you if you run into an entire enemy field of chocobos. There are real dunces on the enemy side now and then, and by endgame you're really cruising through random encounters. But it's such a refresher to not spend most of the game entirely overpowered and plowing through these monsters. All non-human enemies scale too, so grinding and overgrinding just doesn't work. Although human enemies, that is to say most of the story battles, do not scale as far as I know, which can lead to whooping ass against them. All of this, the crafted writing, the dopamine hijacking battle system, the beautiful action figures on a board presentation, all of this turns Final Fantasy Tactics into not only a unique entry in the long-running series, but one that hasn't been matched since from a narrative and mechanical standpoint. And I'm confident in saying this. No other Final Fantasy touches Tactics in these departments, not even my beloved 9. Going through this game with two veterans back in our analysis series was an absolute treat, and I encourage you again to check it out. Tactics really put the itch in me to play more games that use tactical combat, to finally finish the one remaining route I have in Fire Emblem Three Houses, to break out of the strictly turn-based merry-go-round that I tend to get onto. If nothing else, give the soundtrack a listen. It gives Final Fantasies 4, 6, 8, and 9, all of them, a serious run for their money. To say that Outer Wilds is a special game is unfairly brief. It doesn't communicate the quiet reflections that allow this game to shine, or the exploring the sandbox-esque flow states of play it can put you in. Few games accomplish either. Even fewer accomplish both. My time with Outer Wilds, I admit, began with mild frustration. One of the things that immediately puts a sour taste in my mouth in video games is feeling totally lost. And Outer Wilds offers this as a prerequisite. But the notion of being lost has a negative connotation in the majority of its use cases, and certainly so in video games. What Outer Wilds also does, subtly enough that you might not even think of it in the opening few moments, but will notice it as you go on, is immediately introduce curiosity. The first thing you see upon waking up is a shooting star, or wait, no, that's not a shooting star, it's a rocket of some sort, breaking free of something that seems to have exploded. What's that about? Curiosity is the heartbeat of Outer Wilds. Game designers have learned one thing over the years, that players like you and me, by and large don't like feeling lost. We tell ourselves that we want immersion, that we want discoverability, that we want to strip away distractions of quest markers and minimaps and yellow paint. But the truth of it is, many want that immersion and that sense of freedom. But when the ass hits the asphalt, what we really want is comfort and direction draped in an illusion of total freedom. The guide rails obfuscated just enough to not dent the ego, but present enough to keep discoveries and waypoints and aha moments on a schedule. We like being told where to go. We like direction. But let me present to you what I believe to be a truth. That comfort in the discomfort, in being lost, is a muscle that builds upon being flexed. Outer Wilds flexed that muscle for me. And it's because of the curiosity that flows out of it at every turn. Any and everywhere you look presents a new mystery. What's going on with these ruins? This message mentions a cave and how to get there, so where is it? This message mentions a secret planet that can't even be looked at directly. Where do I even begin? The game trusts its players to be curious, but isn't so caustic as to throw you to the Hearthian wolves. It breadcrumbs you along. It introduces the smaller scale mysteries first, while keeping just enough of the major mysteries sort of in the ether so you don't forget about them. It gives you digestible morsels of exploration that put you into the rhythm. This differs from the aforementioned hidden rails analogy in its intent. It's the difference between a roller coaster and a sandbox at a park. The former manufactures a sense of thrill through careful planning down to the minutiae. The latter gives you the tools, the area, and the time limit, depending on parental predilections, but otherwise steps back, says have fun. And to that end, it's true that this puts the onus on the player to nurture the curiosity. To be blunt, if this kind of probing and seeking is totally uninteresting to you, you might be hitting your head on the proverbial wall or the literal in-game cliff out of dissatisfaction. Another sandbox. Who cares? What's the point of these quote-unquote spiritual experiences if I'm too pissed off to genuinely enjoy them once they get here? Doesn't seem like a great game to me, seems like poor design. I understand this line of thought, and I even know people, friends whom I respect, that thought this way, at least at first. But I challenge you to challenge yourself, because behind the occasionally obtuse adventure puzzle or physics brouhaha is a work of philosophical reflection. I am far from an expert on philosophy, but the truth is that you don't have to be. A large part of philosophy is giving words to the sensations, ideas, and experiences that dot and drive our lives every single day, all the way back to antiquity. Through the investigation of long-extinct civilizations, Outer Wilds asks its players simply, what makes all this so important, metaphysically or teleologically? What drives you? This lies at the core of Outer Wilds, and we see the core of three societies: the Nomai, who worship at the altar of science, the Strangers, who worship at the altar of the divine, and the Hearthians, who worship at the altar of exploration. This blurb isn't meant to be an analysis. To shill one more time, we did a series of episodes doing exactly that, and I highly recommend you take a listen. Patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. But let me say this. Although these cultures were generations upon generations apart, they are one community. They are a shared experience. And they build off of the curiosity and the excitement and the losses and the love of all those who came before. That is, in part, what it means to be human. It is an immutable part of our time here when we are, but death is not. That's half of a pithy truism from the Greek philosopher Epictetus on the fear of death. Quote, "When we are, death is not. When death is, we are not. Why then fear death?" End quote. Even all these months later, I struggle to articulate why exactly that thought was at the forefront of my mind throughout the runtime of Outer Wilds. It wasn't entirely game-related, to be fair. These sorts of thoughts on the great finality of how each minute spent sitting at my corporate-adjacent job that fulfills me insofar as keeping the lights on, but looking back in 70 years, God willing I make it that far, I can't imagine I'll see as enriching in any way, they take a lot of energy from me. They should not be avoided, these thoughts. They are critical for growth, but they're exhausting. I don't want to come off as saying that therapists hate this one video game and you should click here if you want to see more. This game won't fix the almost too cliche to talk about anymore ideas of existential dread. But something about seeing the indifference of a universe, both hostile and mild, both beautiful and vile, and learning about the passions and day-to-days and love affairs and spats and love of life that generations long gone had, now living on in my player character, and by extent living on in me, through keeping their memories alive, there's something in there. Outer Wilds is a game about worshiping, but also about remembering. The Nomai remembering their will. The Hearthians remembering their will through remembering the Nomai. The player character remembering all of this across time loops. And me, the player, remembering the experiences and the thoughts and the feelings that I had of this game. The neutrality of the in-game universe's beauty and hostility, the player's exploration of the world via jetpack and spaceship, the puzzle elements, the location and event-based soundtrack, each of these are boons in their own right. They are a large part of what makes this game engaging and satisfying to play. Landing with your ship just so on a barreling platform is the closest to Han Solo I'll ever feel. Running out of fuel and resorting to your own stash of oxygen that you breathe to propel yourself through the maw of space only to safely get back to your ship before asphyxiation. The honest-to-goodness hilarity of accidentally hitting the eject button on your spaceship and being sent flying to your death into space debris thanks to the obsessive attention to detail that went into the physics engine. Each of these were moments that got me to smile ear to ear like a giddy little kid in Outer Wilds. And seriously though, I thought I would be slick and eject myself out of my ship after plummeting as fast as gravity and propulsion would take me toward an oceanic planet, thinking that I would be able to shoot through the sea and eject myself into the planet's core, only in fact to hit the ocean at bone-shattering speed and splat to death. The game approaches Dark Souls levels of funny. It is a game that seeks to delight, to be sure, but each of these qualities, each of these experiences are but one ingredient apiece. They're not entirely unsatisfying on their own, but when they coalesce, the result is near divine. Outer Wilds is worth your time. Outer Wilds is worth your non-gaming friend's time. It probes our curiosity with a sense of play and philosophical ponderance, both of which anyone can relate to, gamer or not. I am not an authority in any way, and who is even to say what makes up a masterpiece, but I believe that Outer Wilds is a masterpiece of this medium. When I decided to make this list, it was an immediate reaction. The number one spot simply couldn't go to anything else. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and for listening. It was a trying year, in many ways. It was difficult, but it was a year of growth, and it was enriching, and it was fun. I had a great time. I had a great time making the show, and I hope you had a great time listening. I'm really looking forward to where we can push this into 2026. I'm really looking forward to honing this craft and being a little bit better at analyzation, at being a little bit better at speaking, performing on the mic, at being a little bit better of an editor. And most of all, I'm looking forward to creating this for you, because without you, this wouldn't be possible. It would just be me speaking into a microphone in my room, alone. And that's a theme not only in the fictions we've talked about today, and not only in the fictions of film and literature, but also what makes all of these arts so special. Sharing them with others, not keeping them to yourself, but letting them live off of the page, off of the screen, and off of the microphone. My name is Rick Firestone. I am your host, as always. I hope you've loved the show today, and I hope you'll love it all throughout 2026 and the years to come. That's all for now. Signing off. See you soon.